I just finished a backpacking trip with all of my favorite gear, and it's time to share with you everything that I brought with me. The trip was 4 days long with tough conditions and terrain, so I wanted gear that I knew I could rely on and that would keep me comfortable and safe. But I also tested out some new gear, including a new pillow, pump, and shoes that I thought could replace my previous favorite gear in those categories, and I'll also let you know in this video how that all went. The pack that I used was the Durston Wapta 30 with no hip belt. All of my gear weighed just over 20 pounds, including food and water, and the Wapta 30 carried that weight really well, even without the hip belt. I was pleasantly surprised that my pack weight was so low because I did bring some non-ultralight gear on this trip, like my tent and my sleeping pad. You might be asking why I chose to not bring a hip belt. Hip belts do help carry weight a little bit better, but there's three main reasons that I prefer using a pack without a hip belt compared to with a hip belt. The first one is gut compression. I find a hip belt just compresses my gut a little bit, and that makes things a little bit uncomfortable. I find that digestion of food just isn't quite as well, and I find myself being a little bit bloated at the end of the day. The second reason is hip movement. I find that my hips are just a little bit more free without a hip belt, and I'm able to be a bit more nimble and walk in a bit more of an ergonomic way. The third reason is weight. While the hip belt doesn't weigh a ton on the Wapta 30, it is a little bit of extra weight that I'm just not having to carry, and because I don't need it in order to carry 21 pounds comfortably, it's something that I'm fine leaving at home. When you don't use the hip belt, you do lose the hip belt pockets, but the Wapta 30 has awesome storage, and I don't find myself missing those hip belt pockets at all. You have two pockets, one on each shoulder. You have a giant front pocket. You have side pockets that are really easy to reach back and grab water bottles from. And then you have a bottom pocket where I like to store my snacks throughout the day. The pack is also essentially waterproof, which was awesome on this trip because it rained pretty much the entire first 2 days of the trip. We're gonna fully unpack everything, starting with what's on the outside of the pack and then diving into what's on the inside. So not only are you gonna see what I brought with me, but you're also gonna see how I packed my pack. I'm also gonna give you some slightly heavier alternatives to some of the lightweight gear that I brought because I know that a super ultralight pack like the Wapta 30 with no hip belt isn't for everyone. My alternative to the Wapta 30 is the REI Flash 55. It has a larger volume at 55 liters, has a full hip belt with frame, so it carries weight well over 40 pounds really easily. And then it has an adjustable torso, which makes dialing in the fit really nice. Let's start off by going over what I kept in the front shoulder pockets. On the left side here, I have my sunglasses. These are the Ombra sunglasses that I really like because they don't have any arms. So they're really easy to tuck into that pocket and they stay on my head really easily, don't fall off. I've had these pair for 2 years now without breaking them or losing them, which is probably the longest I've ever had a pair of sunglasses without any issues. I also had a sunscreen stick in here and then my inReach. So I like to have my inReach in this front pocket just so that it's a little bit easy to access in case I need to press the SOS button. This is the inReach Messenger Plus. When this first came out, I wasn't sure that a new inReach was necessary, but the picture messaging has been really nice now that I have a baby daughter at home. I'm able to get pictures from Steffi Poo and just stay up to date on what's happening, and it makes going out on longer trips a little bit easier. On the right-hand side here, I have my water filter. On this trip, I use the Katadyn BeFree. I'm just kind of testing the BeFree out again. It is fast, it's compact, easy to use. It did slow down on me on a previous trip and was starting to seem like it was slowing down again. I'm gonna soak it in some vinegar, see if that kind of rejuvenates a little bit. Katadyn also has a newer version of the BeFree that I'm gonna be testing out on a trip coming up. So maybe that is a little bit more reliable because as much as I love the BeFree, I don't fully trust it and probably wouldn't bring it on another through hike. On the side pockets, I kept my water bottles, just 1 liter plastic bottles from the gas station with flip caps on there. You can pick up the flip caps at the sponsor of today's video, Garage Growing Gear. And then I also have my bear spray on here, which we carried because we were traveling in bear country, getting into some pretty remote areas where I know there's bears because I was charged by a bear about 1 kilometer from the trail that we were going on. So nice to have this. And then on the bottom pocket, I just kept snacks. So I think I still have some down here, but just some peanuts, other stuff. I love the bottom pocket for snacks. I can just reach back, grab food while we're on the go, and have those snack without needing to stop for a longer break. On top of the pack, I carried a chair. We were kind of on the fence about bringing chairs for this trip because it's just a little bit added weight, a little bit more bulk, but I'm really glad we did. Especially when we were sitting around camp in the rain. It was nice to sit on a dry chair instead of on a wet log or rock. My personal favorite chair is the Moonlight Elite from Nemo. What I really like about this is it comes with the footprint as the kind of wraparound case. So when you're on softer ground, which is sometimes the case when it's raining, like it was on our trip, the feet don't sink in and you have a little bit more support. Eric Hansen, who I was on this trip with, had the Helinox Chair Zero and he was a little bit jealous of my footprint on the Moonlight Elite. In the front pocket, I kept a bunch of stuff that I might need throughout the day. My poop kit, which includes my trowel, the Bogler trowel, my hand sanitizer, and then my bidet, the Holy Hiker. I love using a bidet because I just get a lot cleaner while I'm out on trips. And this trip was a 4-day trip, so I wanted to stay nice and clean. After that amount of time, you start getting monkey butt if you're not taking care of yourself. I also have my rain jacket in here, which was the Rock Front rain hoodie. So what makes this a really interesting rain hoodie is that it's very inexpensive because it's made with non-breathable material. So it uses a sil nylon, which is non-breathable, but also doesn't wet out. And the way you kind of dump heat and potentially moisture is you use the large chest zip and the large pit zips in order to get mechanical ventilation. On this trip, because we were dealing with so much rain, I found this jacket maybe not the best choice. Because we were wearing our rain gear for 2 days straight, essentially, having something breathable would have allowed a lot more moisture to escape, and I probably wouldn't have been as wet as consistently. Especially once we got to camp, having something breathable allows you to kind of use your body warmth to evaporate the moisture on your layers, and it allows you to be a little bit drier. So on a trip where I am expecting a lot of consistent rain over multiple days, I'd probably leave this at home, bring something breathable. But if it's just 1 day of rain or off and on rain, then the Rock Front's a really good option. I also had rain pants from Montbell, the Montbell Versalite, and this kind of highlighted the difference between a breathable layer and a non-breathable layer because my legs were very dry and pretty warm around camp, whereas my upper body wasn't quite as warm and comfortable with the Rock Front hoodie. We also had a couple other items in here, just a little Swedish cloth in order to wipe down my tent, which had some condensation and moisture on it, and then some bug spray, just some Picardin bug spray, which was nice around camp because there were some bugs. The last thing on the outside of my pack is my Cookit. I put that in here because I was just running out of volume on the inside of the pack, and the Wapta has a really big front pocket. And this Cookit, I'm falling more and more in love with it every single day. And not just because I designed one of the parts of it. It's the Toke's 550 milliliter pot with a little temperature sticker on here in order to let you know how warm the water inside the pot is, because you only really need to warm up your water to 70 degrees Celsius in order to rehydrate meals. So you can save a little bit of fuel that way instead of getting the water to boil. And then holding it all together is the Pika lid. So this is a lid that I designed in collaboration with Peak Outdoors. Ton of different features. There'll be more coming out about this lid, but I'll have links down in the video description so you can get notified of when it's going to drop if it isn't already available by the time this video launches. There's a lot of really cool things with this lid, but what I like the most about it is that I don't need an elastic band in order to keep everything together or use the Toke's bag that it comes with. It just pops right on and cinches onto the pot, and then you have your canister that clamps onto the lid, and then underneath the canister you can have your mini Bic lighter. So with that system, it allows me to then nest both my stove, the BRS 3000, and a pot gripper. It's a really compact system that prevents a lot of rattling because of how much stuff is just connected to the lid, and you don't get rust rings on the inside of your pot because of the canister being nested onto the lid as well. I've used this system in colder temperatures, wind, rain, and it works surprisingly well. The BRS 3000 isn't the most performative stove out there, but it gets the job done. An alternative to the 550 milliliter pot, which isn't probably enough volume for a lot of people out there, especially if you want a hot drink at the end of the day or with your breakfast, is the Toke 750 milliliter. That'll give you enough volume to boil water for a freeze-dried meal, as well as make a cup of coffee or some other hot drink. The cool thing with the 750 pot and the Pika lid is that it allows you to nest a really big stove like the Pocket Rocket Deluxe or Windmaster, which you can't do with the standard Toke's lid and still have a canister and a lighter and everything else in there. A lot of the gear that I'm talking about today is available at my favorite place to buy backpacking gear, Garage Grown Gear. Things like the flip caps from my water bottles, the little pot grabber, and even the Pika lid are all available through Garage Grown Gear. What I love about Garage Grown Gear is that they continue to be the driving force behind new and innovative products. I'm on the new gear page constantly because the people at Garage Grown Gear, I don't know, they have some sort of secret talent, but they're awesome at combing Etsy and Reddit and the wide reaches of the web in order to find the latest and greatest and coolest new gear. Go check out Garage Grown Gear as well as their new gear page down at the link in the video description. Time to jump into what's on the inside of the pack, and I think you'll be interested in seeing how I packed the inside of the pack because I was dealing with a lot of rain, and the way I packed my pack was very intentional. Right at the very, very top is my tent. So I use the Durston X-Dome 1 Plus on this trip. This is version 1.3, so there's a couple little additions compared to the previous version. I think the inner is adjusted a little bit from a dimension standpoint, and it has 2 guy out points on either corner, which was really important on this trip because we encountered some really big wind in the Alpine on our 3rd night. And with this tent fully guyed out, trekking poles installed on the door side and the broad side of the tent in order to provide more structural support, this tent was very secure, very locked down, and I was very impressed with how I was dealing with wind. It didn't even seem like there was any wind where we were, even though it was even difficult to talk based on how windy it was. I also used the short pole set, which was really nice for a couple reasons. First of all, it allows me to pack them inside the pack. Second of all, I did have an issue with one of the aluminum ferrules coming loose on the brow pole of the tent. And because it's the short poles, I was able to take a stick, push it back through, and I was able to continue using the tent with no problems. And now I have that super glued, and it's not an issue anymore. For my guy lines, I keep a set in this little bag here. It's just a bunch of guy lines that I can easily attach on the fly to the tent. And it just allows me to really lock down the tent, but leave this at home if I don't feel like I'm gonna need them. When you're dealing with a lot of guy out points and wind, tent stakes are very important. And I have, I think, 12 in this All Men's Right stake stack. I have 4 really long MSR core stakes, a bunch of MSR groundhog stakes, and then some littler MSR carbon core stakes for spots that maybe aren't gonna get as much strain, but where I still wanna have guide out. The reason I keep my tent right at the top of my pack is so that I can get my tent set up as soon as I get to camp, fold down the top of the pack, and keep everything on the inside relatively dry. And then once I get my tent set up, I can put my pack underneath it and then start unloading everything into the tent. After the tent, I have my ditty bag inside of here. It's just your usual stuff: toothbrush, toothpaste, charging cables. I also have my power bank and my headlamp in here, the Nightcore NU20 headlamp, which is one of my favorite headlamps, and then the NB10000 version 3 power bank, very lightweight power bank, and has 2 USB-C ports, which is nice, which really works with my USB-C cables, and my pump as well. So I brought the Alpenblow pretty much super ultralight pump on this trip. You use either the power bank or your phone in order to run it, and then it will attach to pretty much any sleeping pad out there and inflate it. The Alpenblow is a little bit slow relative to the Pad Pal. I had to wait about 5 minutes to inflate my sleeping pad, but it's quite a bit quieter. You can hear the Pad Pal across the mountains, whereas with the Alpenblow, Eric had to get within 12 feet of me before he noticed how loud it was running. And then I have my food bag inside of this Backcountry Exposures food bag. I love this because it has a really big wide opening so you can easily see everything inside of it. And then it was the perfect size for 4 days of food. I wasn't sure if I was gonna fit everything inside of here, but I was able to fit all my freeze-dried meals, all my breakfast, and all my snacks, which is awesome. And it fits perfectly inside of the bag. That's something that I really like about it, is that the shape of it just kind of slides in. It takes up one layer on my pack and just, yeah, fits really nicely. I also have my camp shoes in here. It's the Z-Packs camp shoes. I've been loving these because of the enclosed toe. They're really easy to slide on as slippers when I'm going pee in the middle of the night. I also use them for around camp on our 3rd day when it wasn't quite as wet and rainy. They do weigh twice as much as my Mayfly sandals, but I think the features that these bring to the table make the weight penalty a little bit worth it. After that, I have everything inside of a Nilo Flume pack liner. Even though the Wapta 30 is essentially waterproof, I use a Nilo Flume pack liner just for a little bit of extra insurance to add waterproofness and keep all my stuff that I really want to stay dry, keep it dry. And right at the top, I have my insulative jacket. This is the Enlightened Equipment Torrid Apex. Awesome for wet, humid environments, which what we are dealing with for the entire 4 days. And super warm, compact, lightweight. This is just an all-around awesome jacket. One of my favorite insulative layers that is made out there. And then after that, I have my clothes, which consists of pretty much Alpha Direct. That was all I really brought on this trip for sleeping layers. This is what I slept in when we were at camp. Alpha Direct shirt, Alpha Direct socks, Alpha Direct pants. Alpha Direct is awesome because it's very lightweight for how warm it is. The downside is that it's expensive. So if you are looking for an alternative that's less expensive, it's still very warm and effective, the Decathlon fleece layers are really, really nice. And then very quickly, we get into my sleep system. And I actually had some troubles deciding on what to bring on this trip. For my pillow, I landed on an item that I was testing out specifically for this trip. Normally I'd bring the Xped Mega Pillow. That's been my favorite go-to pillow. Still very comfortable, awesome pillow. But I want to test out this because it weighs quite a bit less. It's a Z-Packs pillow topper paired with the Big Sky Dream Nation pillow. Combined, this system weighs 120 grams. The inflatable pillow only weighs 50 grams, while the topper weighs 70 grams. But the topper adds a whole bunch of extra comfort and warmth. You have a really soft material on top and then a squishy foam that provides a lot of cushion and really makes the Dream Nation an awesome option. This is the most up-to-date Dream Nation, where you have little loops on the side so you can add a pad strap. And the Dream Nation is just a great ultralight pillow. It's really supportive, it's fairly comfortable, and then you add the pillow topper and it just takes it to the next level. For my sleeping pad, I really went back and forth on what to bring, but I ended up with my old favorite, the REI Helix. Temperatures were forecasted to get down below freezing. We were potentially going to be dealing with snow, so I wanted something that I knew was going to be warm and comfortable. And the REI Helix, it pretty much always delivers. It's one of the most comfortable pads that I've ever used. It's also fairly compact for how much it weighs. It's not lightweight, 700 grams, but because the material it's made of, it's compact and fits into this tiny pack really easily. The big benefit of the REI Helix is the dimpled baffling pattern. You have these raised areas and then these lowered areas, and those raised areas provide a lot of pressure relief and act as little air springs in order to make sleeping on this pad really comfortable. And then we have my top insulation. This was a little bit of a difficult decision, but ended up being kind of a no-brainer. It's the Enlighten Equipment Enigma quilt in a 20-degree version. This quilt is very lightweight because it's made with 950 fill power down, uses a 7-denier shell fabric, and yeah, very warm, very compact, very lightweight. I've used this quilt for years now. It's the quilt I used on the Great Divide Trail. It's still going strong and is my go-to when I need something that is going to be effective but still lightweight, which is always a priority for me. If quilts aren't quite your thing, or you want something a little bit easier, then the ZenBivy system, not necessarily the ultralight version, but just the regular version, is a really good option. Gives you all the benefits of a quilt, but is kind of easier to use, similar to a sleeping bag. Dialing in your sleeping pad is probably one of the most important things for being comfortable when you're on a backpacking trip. And if the REI Helix isn't for you and you want to see my sleeping pad awards video, go check out this video right up here. I go over the best ultralight sleeping pads, the best comfort sleeping pads, the best all-around sleeping pads, and give you a bunch of different options of what I think is top in the market, so you can make a good decision for yourself and get a good night's sleep when you're out in the backcountry.